I'm Chris Carlisle, and you're listening to my podcast. I call it The Chris Show. It's an average podcast made by an average guy. That would be me. And welcome. This week I'm going to tell you about going to the WWE Elimination Chamber event in Houston back in 2019. It was the first time I saw a wrestling pay-per-view in person. I had been to 4 Raws already, 3 there in Houston and 1 at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. The Elimination Chamber was held at the Toyota Center, the home of the Houston Rockets. I also got to see WWE Women's Superstar Becky Lynch at a Cricket Wireless in Houston. And on Thursday, I watched the round 1 and 2 of the NFL Draft. Facebook friends with birthdays this week were Melissa and James, and while Esmeralda celebrated her wedding anniversary. I also went to the RL baseball game on Tuesday. I hope the players that were drafted in the draft this year will have better careers than the 50 biggest NFL busts that we mentioned last week, according to Bleacher Report, and also better than the 15 biggest NBA busts, according to Bleacher Report. Tough crowd. Anyway, starting off at number 15 is Jewel Barry Carroll, who was the number 1 draft pick by the Golden State Warriors in the 1980 NBA draft. Number 14 is Joe Alexander, who was the number 8 pick of the Milwaukee Bucks in the 2008 draft. Number 13 is Hasheem Thabeet, the number 2 pick by the Memphis Grizzlies in 2009. Number 12, Marvin Williams, drafted number 2 by the Atlanta Hawks in 2005. Number 11 is Sean Bradley, drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers at number 2 in 1993. Number 10 is Jay Williams, the number 2 pick of the Chicago Bulls in the 2002 draft. At number 9, Robert Traylor, who was taken by the Milwaukee Bucks at number 6. At number 8 is Chris Washburn, who was drafted in 1986 at number 3 by the Golden State Warriors. At number 7, Adam Morrison, drafted by the then Charlotte Bobcats in 2006. Number 6, Kwame Brown, drafted by the Washington Wizards in 2001. Number 5, LaRue Martin, the number 1 draft pick of the Portland Trail Blazers in the 1972 draft. Number 4 is Greg Oden, also taken by Portland, but this time in 2007, and also at number 1. At number 3 is Michael Olowokandi. He was drafted by the Los Angeles Clippers in 1998. Number 2 is Darko Milicic, taken by Detroit at number 2 in 2003. And the number 1 draft bust, according to Bleacher Report, is Sam Bowie, drafted number 2 in 1984 by the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, in the 1984 draft, the Houston Rockets had the number 1 pick. Portland, of course, had the number 2 pick. And the Chicago Bulls have the number 3 pick. Well, as you know, the Rockets drafted Hakeem Olajuwon out of the University of Houston, while the Bulls drafted some guy named Michael Jordan out of North Carolina. Bowie was never quite the player the Blazers hoped he would be, while Olajuwon and Jordan won 8 championships between them. Now, on next week's show, we'll take a look at the biggest MLB draft busts. Alright, coming up, the 2019 Elimination Chamber and seeing WWE Women's Superstar Becky Lynch. for Houston on Saturday so I could go to the Becky Lynch meet and greet on Sunday morning. I think I stayed at Quality and not far from where I used to live in Houston. Anyway, the meet and greet was scheduled for I think around 9, but because Becky Lynch was at the time one of the most popular superstars in WWE, I got up at 6 in the morning and headed over to the Cricket Wireless near the Galleria. And when I got there, I found out how popular Becky was. And still is, I think, too. The line stretched all the way around the building down to the next street. Now I can just imagine the crowds back in the day for Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and John Cena. And I also have my cell phone in the car so I couldn't take any pictures. And by the time I got close to the front, it was time for her to leave and head downtown for the Elimination Chamber, but she did walk up to the window and wave at everyone. I wound up eating lunch at Papacito's, a Mexican restaurant located in the Hilton Americas next to the Toyota Center. And then I walked over and got in line. I think they let us around 4:30. So the show started around 6. I sat on the side facing what they call the hard camera, which is the camera the wrestlers faced when they were being interviewed or cutting promos on television. Alright, now in the pre-show, Buddy Murphy retained the Cruiserweight title by beating Akira Tozawa in the pre-show. The Cruiserweight title that time was defended on 205 Live. Now the actual pay-per-view started off with the first of 2 Elimination Chamber matches. Now the Elimination Chamber match takes place in a circular structure with 4 pods in each corner. The first 4 superstars that are introduced are placed in the pods, with the last 2 to be introduced start the match, with the others joining at different intervals. The first match was for the revived Women's Tag Team Championship, which had not been active since the late 1980s, when WWE was known as the WWF. The first team out was the team of Carmella and Naomi, which called themselves Fabulous Glow. And they were followed next by Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan, who were representing the faction the Riot Squad. Then it was the Iconics, Peyton Royce and Billie Kay from Australia. And next the team of Nia Jax and second generation superstar, that is, Tamina Snuka. And the last 2 teams out, and the 2 teams that would start the match, were the teams of Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, aka Fire and Desire, and Sasha Banks and Bayley, who at that time were known as the Boss and Head Connection. Now the Riot Squad were the first to join in the match, so it was Bayley and Sasha versus Mandy and Sonya versus Liv and Sarah. Next up were the Iconics, which made it the Boss and Head Connection versus Fire and Desire versus the Riot Squad versus the Iconics. Okay? And the last 2 teams in were Fabulous Glow and Nia and Tamina. Or Nia and Tamina. And that put all 6 teams in the match with no eliminations. That was until the Iconics eliminated Fabulous Glow, and the Iconics themselves were eliminated by Nia and Tamina, who then eliminated the Riot Squad. The Boston Head Connection and Fire and Desire joined forces to eliminate Nia and Tamina. And finally, the Boston Head Connection eliminated Fire and Desire to win the match and become the first WWE Women's Tag Team Champions in 30 years. They cried during the post-match interview. The next match was for the SmackDown Tag Team Championship, pitting the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, The Miz and Shane McMahon. Before the match, The Miz, who was a babyface at that point, and his wife Maryse announced they were expecting their second child. Anyway, the Usos ended up beating The Miz and Shane McMahon to win the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. And on the next pay-per-view, Shane McMahon would end up turning on The Miz. Alright, The next match was for the Intercontinental Championship. It was a handicap match, pitting Finn-Balor against the team of Bobby Lashley, who was the WWE Intercontinental Champion, and his point man, or his hype man rather, Lio Rush. Now the pre-match stipulation was Finn-Balor pinned either Lashley or Rush, then Lashley would lose the IC title. Well, Balor ended up pinning Lio Rush and becoming the new Intercontinental Champion. And after the match, clearly irate, Bobby Lashley laid out Lio Rush and left him laying in the ring. Now, some guy who was sitting behind me screamed, "That's child abuse!" Next, they hyped the Royal Rumble for the following year in Houston at Minute Maid Park. I also went to the Rumble, and there's a two-part episode about it. That would be episodes 21 and 22. There was Next was an in-ring interview with Charlotte Flair. Ronda-Rousey defended the next match. It was Ronda-Rousey defending the Raw Women's Championship against Ruby Riott, and Ronda was victorious. After the match was over with, Becky Lynch came out on crutches and managed to hit both Flair and Rousey with the crutches. The next match was a Falls Count Anywhere, no disqualification match between Baron Corbin and Braun Strowman. Anyway, Corbin beat Strowman with help from Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre. Alright, coming up is the other Elimination Chamber match for the WWE Championship. Alright, a little jazz for you, and yes, that was the song I played earlier. Alright, time now for the Elimination Chamber match for the WWE Championship. Now, the New Day did their Don't You Dare Be Sour intro as Xavier Woods and Big E walked out with Kofi Kingston, who was the first superstar to come out for the Elimination Chamber match. Kofi, along with the Viper, Randy Orton, Samoa Joe, the phenomenal AJ Styles, and Jeff Hardy, were challenging the new Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship. And he started the match against Samoa Joe. The referee was senior official Mike Chioda. The first one out of the pod was Kofi Kingston joining Bryan and Joe. Next up in the match was AJ Styles. He then eliminated Samoa Joe. Jeff Hardy was the next to come into the match, and then he was eliminated by Daniel Bryan. Next was the Viper, Randy Orton, who was the last out of the pod, joining Bryan, Styles, and Kingston. Orton then eliminated Styles, which left Orton, Bryan, and Kingston as the only superstars left in the match. That was until Kingston eliminated Orton. So it came down to the new Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship. And Bryan retained the title by defeating Kofi to win the match. Kofi was clearly the show stealer as the crowd clearly got behind him. And the New Day, Big E and Xavier came out to pat him on the back and congratulate him on a good match as he got a good round of applause. And he would go on to defeat Bryan at WrestleMania to capture the WWE Championship. Anyway, I got through my Taco Bell, which was right next to where I was staying, and I took it up to my room and ate it. I don't remember what I got. Anyway, the next morning before heading back home, I went over to Space Center Houston. While I was there, I got some souvenirs, including the book Failure is Not an Option, written by Gene Kranz, who was a longtime flight director at NASA, going all the way back to Project Mercury. And in fact, I'm in the middle of reading that book right now. I'm on chapter, let me see here. Chapter 15 is called Simsup Wins the Final Round. By the way, Mr. Kranz was a guest on the Dave Ward and Friends podcast, hosted by legendary Houston newsman Dave Ward on various podcast apps. I have it on Google Podcasts. Sorry. Yeah, let's see here. In round 1 of the NFL draft, the Houston Texans had the number 3 pick, and they drafted cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. out of LSU. They also had the 15th pick, and they drafted guard Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. And also, when I was at the Space Center, I also heard a talk from one of the astronauts, although I don't remember who it was. Okay, back to the NFL draft now. The Dallas Cowboys picked tackle Tyler Smith from Tulsa at number 24. Now I'll have the rest of the Cowboys and Texans picks on next week's show. But that'll do it for this week. I want to thank you for listening, and I also want to thank you for downloading the Chris Show. I know I don't have not competition for the likes of Joe Rogan or Adam Carolla or anybody else, but I'm glad you took the time to listen. You can find me on Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, Deezer, Podcast Addict, and Podchaser. The Chris Show is produced, written, and hosted by Chris Carlisle. That's me. See you next time.